Hi guys, so welcome back. We've got a bit more bolted back on the Tirana and a few more shiny bits ready to go on. Today what we're going to get through is rocker geometry. So you could possibly just bolt it all back on the standard push rods and standard rockers and it'd be okay. I don't like the 202s with the bridged aluminium saddles that go through them, and Crow sold us their stainless roller rockers to go with it. So what we've got now is guide plates and screw-in studs because we've lost the saddles that go over to bridge the rockers together. So we've got to measure up for hardened push rods. And while we're measuring up for hardened push rods, we've got to get the right rocker arm geometry, which will then give us our correct push rod length. So I've got all the screw-in studs torqued down. So the head's been converted to run 7/16 studs, which means they've all been torqued down to 55 foot-pound. All those holes go through to cooling system passages, so they've all been sealed up with the Edelbrock gasket cinch, same stuff we used on the head studs. So yeah, so now what we're going to run through is I'm going to try to make it easy to understand for working out the correct rocker arm geometry, which will then let us get the correct length of push rod that we need to work with the motor. So basically we're not measuring up push rods first to set the rocker arm geometry. We're going to get the rocker arm geometry where it needs to be, so it tells us how long the push rods need to be. And what you're looking for with the rocker arm is for the rocker arm to be at 90 degrees to the valve stem at mid-lift. So not at fully open, not at fully closed. It'll be mid-lift. You want your rocker sitting at 90 degrees to the valve stem. So I've got some pictures over there that are really crude because I can't draw for love or money. That hopefully explains it a bit more simple. There is a guy on YouTube that explains it way better and has done it a lot more than me. If you go over and watch Vice Grip Garage, Derek Bieri, he goes through all his storytelling and stuff like that on a 454 big block. Same principle, doesn't matter what motor it is. And he runs really right into depth on how it happens. So, and his is about the most basic and easy understanding explanation I've seen of how to work it out. A lot of other ones are just confusing as hell. So we'll get into that right now. The other thing we were going to run through, because I don't think I said it last time, is what we found out with the cylinder head when Graham had it out getting it machined. So if anyone saw the short the other day of the rocker cover all painted up, it's got the old 3300 XU1 sticker decals across the top of it. Ends up being casting numbers and everything off this cylinder head. It's an original LJ XU1 cylinder head. So small chamber, high compression, big valves, good XU1 head. Yellow Terror in the early 80s got a hold of it and went bigger valves, relief cut around the inlet valves so they were unshrouded, and has taken a bit of a surface grind off of it and stuff like that. All those valves were worn, so we've gone fresh valves the same size as what Yellow Terror had in there to start with. Graham's cleaned it all up, set all the seat pressures for us, and Yellow Terror also milled out all the intake bridges in the red motor intake ports on the cylinder heads and converted it to those through tubes that go through where the cylinder head studs go through. So all in all, a really tidy little head that we've also taken a bit more of a skim off. That combined with our 40 thou flat top pistons in the bottom end, should give it a little bit of herbs, a little bit of spice. It'll be a nice little combo. This camshaft that Crow's ground for it is similar, not the same as, but similar to a LJ XU1 grind. A little bit more lift, a little bit more LSA on it, stuff like that. So yeah, so it should be a spicy little thing, especially when we get the ignition and the EFI hooked up. So I'm going to have a coffee, we'll get around the whiteboard and we'll try and work out this whole rocker arm thing. Okay. Okay, so what we've got through here is basically what we were talking about. So at mid-lift on the cam, we want the rocker between the trunnion and, or the roller pivot and the pivot on the end. You draw an imaginary center line through that. At mid-lift, that needs to be 90 degrees to our angle of our valve stem. So that way it's pushing in the center of the valve and it's not putting a lot of side load on it, yada, yada, yada. Also isn't gonna bind up our coil, our spring on the valve spring. We've already worked out, we've got 7/16 screw-in studs. You could also have 3/8. So with a 7/16 screw-in stud, they are 20 teeth per inch, 20 TPI, which means per every turn of the adjuster nut on your stud, it changes the height by 50 thou. So we're going to need that for later on. The lift on the cam, on exhaust and intake, both are the same. They're 0.423. So we divide that by 2 to get half lift, which means mid-lift is 0.2115. So our lift at mid-lift at 0.2115, we're going to divide that by our 50 thou per turn of stud, which gives us 4.23 turns of the adjuster nut on the stud. So if we go 4.23 turns down, that will give us our mid-lift 90 degree ratio. Clear as mud. It is what it is. That's what it is. So where we've got 50 thou, if you had a 3/8 one, say you've got 3/8 studs in your engine, you've got 24 TPI, which means you work on 42 thou per turn, and you do the same sums there with your lift and everything. So what we're going to go for is, when we go over to the motor, we're going to slide one of our rockers on. We're going to set it up at 90 degrees to the valve stem, and then we're going to adjust our adjuster nut down 4.23 turns, so nearly 4¼ turns. So let's go back over to the engine and show you what it looks like over there. Okay, so what we've done is we've dropped one of our lifters into the lifter bore for the, which one is it? Intake valve on number 1. And we've got our push rod length checker. We've gone the 9" to 10" long one because it goes slightly shorter than what the standard push rod was, and it'll go longer. So I'm hoping that gives us a rough starting point of where to go from. So we're going to drop that one down into the seat. Sitting through there. And then we've also got the, turning around here. So this is the stainless steel Crow 7/16 1/5 ratio roller rocker, and that's our center line we want to measure through there. So going from the center of that trunnion through to the center of there, that imaginary horizontal line there, we want that 90 degrees to our valve stem. So we're going to slip him down over there, and we're just going to loosely start our nut. So he's just caught on the leading edge of the thread there, and now we're going to go back to what we were saying. We worked out 4.23 turns. But firstly, we need to work out 90 degrees, and these valve retaining or valve spring retaining plates, the top plates, will be parallel to your valve stem face. So what we're going to do is grab a Allen key or something to lay across it so that we can work out where our 90 degrees is. So if we go buses, about there. So from there, we're going to count our turns down. And I might grab a paint pen just so we can mark that. Okay, so what I've done is I've put a paint mark on the edge of the adjuster nut there, so I know how many turns I'm going to count down. And with that sitting there loosely on that, you lift it up, hold it hard up against it, and with that hard up there, we've got that at 90 degrees to the valve stem. Just let that drop down now. And from there, we're going to count down 4 1/4 as a starting point. 1, 2, 3. So that's 4. And not quite a quarter. And that should be where we now, if I hold that up and adjust our push rod length with the threaded ends on it, so we've got 0 lash, that will be our rough starting point for where we want our push rod length. So see if I can get in here and hold it at both ends and turn it. So I'm not trying to put any kind of pressure on it or collapse the lifter. I just want to get it to 0 lash. So it's still got a fair way to go there. Might have to start doing some on the upper adjuster. Okay, so that has got no up and down play in it, and we've got no compression on our lifter, so we're not sinking the lifter down in. So with these checking kits, they've actually got little lock nuts on them, the ones that Crow sell. So we'll just grab a spanner and seat them so it doesn't change length on us. That needs a little bit more, moved it. Yep, so I'll grab a spanner and we'll lock them up and we'll measure that. Okay, so we've adjusted the length of our push rod so you can still spin it nice and free, but there's no up and down play in it. So we're basically at 0 lash, putting no pressure on our hydraulic lifter. What I did forget to mention before, and it's really important, we want that lifter to be on the base circle of the cam. We don't want it halfway up the lobe, we don't want it on the tip of the lobe at full lift. It has to be on the base circle. So before you start any of that I've just done, got it all out of sequence on yous, I'm sorry, but yeah, so before you do any of that, make sure we're on the base circle of the cam lobe, then lock a stud on, get it 90 degrees to your valve stem, and then however many turns you've worked out for the ratio of your thread and everything, we wound ours down just on 4 1/4, and that's where we've set our push rod length. So all happy. Now what we're going to do is take that off, take the push rod out, and we're going to allow for lift to preload about 50 thou. So what we're going to want to do is measure the push rod and add 50 thou length to it, and that should be technically the length of the push rod that we need, allowing for preload on the lifter. So take that off now. And remembering we still haven't wound it over and haven't checked our pattern on the valve stem yet. And when we look at that, If we had have just gone, you know what, we'll go with a standard length push rod, we are nowhere near the right length for that. It's the actual, about the length of that adjuster tip there, that it's too short. So we're now going to add 50 thou to this overall length, pop it back in. We're going to put a bit of bearing glue or grease on the tip and then do a full 2 turns, and that'll show us what kind of pattern we've got on the tip of the valve stem. Alrighty, so I've added 50 thou into the length of the push rod checking tool, and that's back down in. We're going to take our roller rocker and drop it back on the stud. What I have put on the tip of the valve stem is a light coating of bearing glue, just so we can check our pattern once we've adjusted it. Sit that down. So we're going to go to the point of 0 lash, and then where Crow says, the specs say anywhere from half to 1 full turn of preload, we'll go about 3/4 of a turn. So that's pretty much there, 0 lash. So 3/4 of a turn from there. Our red paint mark is there. So we're going to go half, 3/4. Come off there. So it's about 3/4 of a turn on our adjuster. And now we'll give the motor 2 full turns, see what it does. One more time. And just because I want to put it back around, we're firing number 1 should be. So that should be top dead center, number 1 firing for later on when we pull it apart. Alright, so now what we've got to do is back that off, take our rocker off, and have a look and see what our wear pattern on the valve tip is. I'll grab this off of there and let's just have a look. So with that push rod adjusted to there, we can see the wear tip mark is in the middle of the tip of the valve, not off to one side. I probably had a little bit too much bearing glue on there, but you can see it's rubbing quite nice right in the center. And that wasn't that painful. So now we know, because we've got the same lift on both, I will go through and check the inlets as well just to make sure. But the length of that pushrod adjuster is the length of the pushrods we need to order in a hardened pushrod from Crow. And we're ready to bolt all the top end together, chuck all the lifters in and adjust the valves, and she's ready to fire up. Okay, we'll clean this up and start showing you what the pretty things are that we're going to start bolting on her. Okay, so the first of the bits we've got done is we've gone through and cleaned up the factory rocker cover, found a decal from Rare Spares that went onto the old LC LJ XU1s. Okay, it's an LX, but the cylinder head and the motor and the specs is all XU1, so we went with that. And hopefully, by what I can feel inside, by the time we put the cork gasket on it, there should be enough room to clear the rocker studs and the adjuster nuts for the posi locks on the rockers. So fingers crossed that's going to clear and we can use that. If not, we may be looking at a Aussie Speed billet one. So now over here we've got the Aussie Speed 2-barrel intake, which is going to need a little bit of clearancing on the fingers there because it doesn't quite fit into the headers properly, but it's a rough cast setup and it's basically machined ready to go on with a little bit of tweaking. Headers have come back from competition coatings and they've sandblasted all of those and ceramic coated them in a satin black for us, as well as the main engine pipe and tailpipe as well. They've done a really mint job on that, cleaning everything up. So now we're going to take this stuff and put it in there, and hopefully it all starts and fits. Right, so I've got the headers dummied in and I've had to muck around a whole lot with the Aussie Speed intake. The casting on that thing, they're a nice flowing manifold, and as far as fitment goes, they're an absolute pain in the backside. The flanges are all as cast. Yes, they've been milled flat and everything like that, so that side of things is good. But to try and, I don't know, I just don't like these Holdens with the flame and the shared intake and exhaust clamps. The casting on the Aussie Speed is thicker than the casting on the flange for the headers. The original Holden cupped washers that clamp on there won't work, and we've had to swap some studs out for bolts and yada yada yada. So we've done a dummy fit, so we know it's going to fit how the hardware is there. So we're going to take the hardware back out, lay it all out in order, and take the manifolds off. We're going to 3-bond the gasket and bolt it all back on, and hopefully it all seals from there, because I really don't want to pull that off again. So we'll get into it now. Okay, so manifolds have been off, gasket's been gooped up, put back on, manifolds back on. Whoever at GM thought to hold the exhaust and intake on with the same studs should be hung. But it's on there, it's all done, that's all solid. Now we're going to go underneath the car, and hopefully the rest of the system I've built falls on pretty easy. Now that that's all solid and mounted away, we'll get under the car. Alright, so now I've just got to try and remember how this went in. I think I could get it into this hanger out here without taking the hanger off. I think, if I can see. Did I have the hanger off? No. Okay, I'll drop the hanger off, and that's going to be okay, take two. So I took the hanger off the car, put it on the muffler, and then used the gearbox stand to pop it up in. And we managed to get it in and square it up where the muffler box is nice and level, and we've got an air gap to the cross member and an air gap to the tunnel. So tighten the V-band clamp up here, and then we'll get the rest of the system on. That's nice, solid, not going anywhere. We'll get the tailpipe off the truck, see if we can't get that one in. Move you guys around to the back. Now this one, I have to, what have I got to do here? This one we have to drop the shock is. That's right. So for this one to clear the diff pumpkin, we've actually got to drop the shocks off and let the diff hang down. So we'll go up. Don't realise how small the floor underneath the flaming Tirana is until you start trying to put stuff back in it. Okay, so these should all still be loose because we knew you had to drop it again. So there's one. And two. Oh, yeah. Come. There we go. Now, should we let this down a bit? And that should give us enough room, I think, to sneak the tailpipe up over the top and feed it in from the driver's side and slide it across. By memory, I had to go there, And I've got the torch in the way. And then that sits there. Awesome. So now, that can balance there without sliding. Grab our last V-band clamp. And try and work out how I'm going to get in here. Do I maybe try and loosely mount up this tailpipe to hold it in place? If I can remember where that went and how that went. That way. Or did it sit that way? Sat that way, didn't it? That sits up there. This goes here. Slides on up to there. Right. There. See if we can get this one without scratching the heck out of the tailpipe. Jesus, I thought it was going to drop. Okay, so that's loose enough to go on there now. That's there. This can slide up without scratching. And about there somewhere. And this is dark. Okay. So that's loosely held in the back there. So now I should be able to work our way up in and get the V-band on. Torch. Is all good and sealed, so we can tighten that up. It's clear everywhere. we can throw our shockies back on and worry about lining the tailpipe up. Because that is, where's our torch? Clear in there, clear in there. Lines up with the body. Happy days. Okay, tight. So now, so we can see what we've got for clearance, and hang that last hanger at the bottom. Just make sure our springs are located back in the pockets. There's one. And two. Rightio. Time to get the hanger done for the tailpipe. Okay, so we've got our tailpipe all lined up and the hanger basically where we wanted it. It's nice and relaxed and neutral. Everything seems to be clearing the rest of the system, so we'll tighten this up. And then all we have to do is tighten that little hanger up. And that should be done and tight. Should be in. Okay, so that's all tight. And the only thing we have left to do is make sure 100% that's what we want. Everything clears, fuel tank clears, fuel tank strap clears. Floor clears. So now we just have to work out the angle of the tip and where he wants it to sit. Work out that. Probably won't look too bad doing that. I'll let the car down a bit lower so I can get a bit more of a push on it, and we'll wind it up where I think it's going to need to go. So that's all square. There we go. That's what I wanted. To join up for there, so that blends the clamp in, and you can't really tell. It just looks like it's part of the clamp. Sits flush with the back edge. Stainless clamp, stainless tip. And if anything, later on through the week I might just give it a little tack on the inside to the clamp just to hold it and stop it vibrating up on the inside. And you'll never know the difference. Alright, we're done. Okay folks, so we're wrapped up on the Tirana for this weekend. So as a roundup of what we've got done, we've measured up for our push rods and got our rocker arm ratio, I keep stuffing that up, got our rocker arm geometry right, and yes, you can do it, it is really easy. That setup there, that the guys at, who was it? That was Vice Grip Garage, had that on their page years ago. And if you follow through those steps, really basic, and it works. So we've got exhaust and intake on, measured up for push rods, and got to order those through the week now. And then we can get that rocker cover bolted back down and sealed up for the last time. And then underneath, the system that we built has fitted up nice, clears everywhere, sits nice and snug, shouldn't have any leaks, and the tip looks nice and flush with where we wanted it to end at the back, just under the rear bumper. And the strap that holds it on, we've managed to make it blend into where the tailpipe is, so it just looks like an extension of the tailpipe. So all in all, really neat and tidy, and no more rattles. So, well, we'll find out once we hook it all up. But yeah, again, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. If you found it interesting and it was helpful, give us a like, share, subscribe, it'll help us. And yeah, till next time, see you around. Bye.